Hello everyone, Benjamin Yurkovich here with Washington Weather Chasers. In this video, we're going to be talking about how we currently have a fire weather watch in place for Western Washington for potential fire danger on Tuesday. And Tuesday, it is going to be much hotter than yesterday was and today will be, with some of the high resolution models trying to portray that it might end up being in the low 90s for some locations of Western Washington. But at a minimum, it is going to be at least into the mid to upper 80s for many locations, potentially even getting hotter west of the Cascades than east of the Cascades. And this is going to be because of easterly winds that's going to be coming across the Cascade Mountains and really ripping through the Cascade Gaps, like the Highway 2 corridor, the I-90 corridor, Stampede Gap, and down there by the gorge. And right now we can see this is yesterday's system beginning to move out of the region. And if we pop over to the radar, we can see that there are still some residual showers in northeast Washington and southeast Washington. And now popping back to the satellite imagery, this is going to be clearing out of the area, and we're going to be seeing a lot more clearing across Washington state today. This is looking at this morning's minimum temperatures. Pretty chilly, more autumn-like, especially down in southwest Washington, down by Longview. Temperatures got down to 43 degrees. Even right here, look at that, we see a couple 39s. And in the southern Cascades, we see quite a few areas that made it down to the upper 30s. So, yep, fall is knocking. Okay. So, looking at the upper air pattern, we can see height anomalies here, helps us identify ridges and troughs. We can see right here, this is yesterday's trough beginning to move out of the area, and there's a ridge that's going to quickly build in behind it, and that is part of the reason why we're going to get such hot temperatures west of the Cascades, and also what's going to help contribute for the offshore wind. It's going to be this system offshore and this ridge that is going to be over us that is going to contribute towards that. So, looking at cloud cover here, just want to show you guys how we see today's system, kind of still some residual clouds around. Looking out the window right now, I can still see some clouds here, which matches up with what we're seeing here. But as we go through the day on Monday, today we are going to see quite a bit of clearing, and it's going to warm up a little bit as well. So, looking at temperatures, looks like it did pretty well on temperatures for this morning. Going through today by, this afternoon, it shows us getting into the low 60s for much of western Washington, warmer as you go south, and eastern Washington, Wenatchee making it up to 83, Yakima 78, Kennewick 79, Spokane 69. And if we were to look at the European model for today, it shows a similar picture for temperatures. Upper 60s for much of western Washington, low 70s for down by Longview, and mid 70s for Vancouver, Washington, and 50s to 60s on the coast. 73, Yakima 76, 76, Yakima 73, Wenatchee, Spokane 67, and Kennewick 74. Okay, so now let's go ahead and zoom off into tomorrow. What's going to happen is the winds overnight are going to begin to be a bit more offshore. And when you have offshore winds coming off of the slopes of the Cascades, that wind compresses a bit and warms the air temperatures. So tomorrow is going to be much, much warmer. As you can see, look at this. Most of western Washington gets at least into the 80s. And the high resolution rapid refresh model shows temperatures getting into the low 90s. It would be a little bit surprising if this actually were to occur, but if it did occur to this degree of warming, it would be pretty impressive. Basically, a very, very brief single day heat wave is expected for tomorrow. And again, if we were to look over at the European model does not have temperatures getting this warm tomorrow, like the HER. This is looking at 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m., but it still does have temperatures getting at least into the mid 80s for many locations like Bellevue, North Bend, Duval, Monroe, and down by Enumclaw has temperatures getting almost to 90 degrees. And also down there by Chehalis and whatnot. Pretty warm day for September 16th. And this is all going to be because of the ridge that's building over us, but also because of these easterly winds that are going to develop across the Cascades. So here we can see the pressure gradient beginning to set up, cross gradient offshore over the Cascades. And as this occurs, we begin to get more offshore winds. And this model, the HRRR, shows winds being sustained in some locations on the I-90 corridor and the US 2 corridor around 20 miles per hour or so, gusting higher. And as we go through the morning, the winds appear that they're going to peak in the mid-morning tomorrow on Tuesday, and then begin to weaken throughout the day, but they are still sustained throughout the day. So part of the reason why we have the fire weather watch in place, the National Weather Service in Seattle has issued that, is because of the possibility of rapid fire spread with higher temperatures, lower humidities, and wind. Right now, there's no fires that I know of that are on the western slopes of the Cascades that could pose that rapid spread danger. However, if there were to be any new fire starts, this could pose a problem. If you guys remember, a couple years ago, we had the Bolt Creek fire on US 2. It was a very similar weather pattern to what we are seeing with this, offshore winds, and that fire spread very rapidly on the morning that fire started. So hopefully we don't have any new fire starts. And that's, again, the offshore wind is going to lead to the higher temperatures on Tuesday west of the Cascades. East of the Cascades, temperatures are still going to get into the mid 80s, but that's not going to be anything too unusual for the folks that live over there. Looking at the near surface smoke density model output from the HRRR, we can see that as the wind begins to turn offshore, that there will be some surface smoke that's going to make it west of the Cascades tomorrow. And a lot of this is going to be determined by how much these fires burn today. So we'll have to see if there's any big fire activity on the Lower Sugarloaf fire or the Wildcat fire today, because whatever smoke gets produced today will get pushed west of the Cascades tomorrow. But then again, if there, God forbid, is any new fire starts west of the Cascades where the wind is really ripping, that all that smoke from a new fire would come into Western Washington. So really hoping there's no new wildfire starts tomorrow that could pose any issues for areas west of the Cascades. And let's take a look at what the gusts are going to look like on the HRRR. So you can see that by tonight, the winds begin to pick up a little bit over the Cascades and west of the Cascades. But then tomorrow, the HRRR really has the wind getting fairly strong. I think it's even stronger than what I was showing yesterday. It has a couple locations near I-90, near North Bend, getting up to 59 miles per hour. And that could very well be being overdone. I'm going to select this, though, and I'm going to take a look at exactly where that location is here. And we will just try to pinpoint where that strongest wind may occur. Stand by with me for just a second here. So that area of wind right here is just southeast of North Bend and River Bend, along the mountains, McClellan Butte, and also on the slopes just above Chester Morse Lake. So yeah, some pretty strong wind there in the I-90 corridor, the US 2 corridor, and also up in portions of Skagit County, Whatcom County. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see both how warm it gets tomorrow and also how windy it gets in portions of western Washington. And then looking off into the future, actually one thing I wanted to talk about before I go off into the future is we can see how tomorrow when this ridge begins to build over the area, there's this gradient across the Cascades, offshore winds, and there's also going to be a system moving up the coast that is going to assist with pulling some of these winds offshore. All right, so now let's zoom out. Going to look off into the future a little bit. We've got this morning's GFS run currently running, but it doesn't really go off far enough to really give us a clear idea. So we'll look at the 06Z model run upper air pattern real fast. And we're just trying to see if there's the possibility of the storm train kicking into action to give us some real sustained autumn-like rainy weather that could really put an end to the wildfire season. So if we zoom out to next weekend, there is a pretty impressive jet extension that's moving across the North Pacific, and it appears that it is going to be aiming at the Pacific Northwest, Washington State, and that could bring some rain next weekend. But then we're really also curious to see what is going to happen next week. If we can get continued jet stream activity pointed at Washington State, with multiple systems moving into the area. If we were to look at the GEFS, which is the ensemble data for the GFS, we can see how much agreement it appears there may be. And for next weekend, we can see that things begin to get a little bit more fuzzy. You know, the jet stream doesn't look quite as consolidated on the ensemble data, but there still is a decent signal that by the weekend and next week, there's a decent chance of there being some sort of systems moving toward the region, but there is also going to be some troughing nearby. And we can look at that on the anomaly data here. I don't know. To me, this is appearing like we are going to move into a more active period, possibly. But there's no guarantees in that just yet either. So, I personally, though, am hoping for some good rainy weather. And if you're enjoying these videos, I would just ask that you go ahead and like and subscribe this video. And I'm going to try to do these videos a little bit more often. And if I didn't talk about your specific area, I apologize. I'm going to try to get better at talking about each specific area. I'm not going to be able to cover every single individual area, but I want to try to give a healthy balance for all of Washington State. So anyways, folks, I hope you are having a good day, and I will talk to you later.